Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. It's been a tragic couple days in Toronto. This rash of mystery shootings, which I'm surprised the police have not identified that they're connected yet, given that most of them take place in the same general area of town. It's a time where we really need to start thinking about our laws. Now, yes, in this case, the police do not have to confirm a lot of details. They don't want to say there's a mass shooter going on out there because people are prone to panic. And I understand. I did actually ask the police directly, and they would not confirm or deny what was going on as far as a connection between all these murders is. And that's just policing in the modern day. Take it or leave it. You know, when there's a murder running around, I'm going to take questionable policing over no policing whatsoever. We're not here on this planet to play John Rambo and clean the streets of crime. We're here to live our lives peacefully. People like myself, with some background in the military and stuff, did devote a certain amount of our life to violence, but now vastly prefer to live a peaceful life. But this is a problem that we're seeing worldwide. The law and law officers are becoming increasingly unable to, what's a good word for this, to compete with criminals. Now, officers are not stupid. They have decades, if not over a century, of psychology, detective practice, and technology at their fingertips to work with. So this is in no way a bad reflection on the police. We can deal with bad police another time. But it is a very damnable reflection on the laws that we have. One thing that's debated sometime is how organic the legal system should be. And I believe in a living legal system, which means it should constantly be evolving and adapting. Where did adapting come from? By that I mean the laws we have in Canada, the laws in the United States, come from a century, if not multiple centuries ago. And no offense to the people that drafted those documents, they did the best they could with the information they had at the time. They had the best intentions that were humanly possible in centuries that were rather brutal and unforgiving. I don't think anybody from today would honestly want to go back to the 1700s or the 1800s. Hell, even the early 1900s and mid-1900s were brutal years. And this is what we have to realize. We are in a new situation. Yes, they may have specified certain things, and we should honor our traditions. I don't think anybody's going to argue about the age of majority or the age of consent. No, those are good laws. Let's keep them as they are. Maybe in 100 years, we might want to change them, because as people start to live longer, adolescence will grow. Kids being educated are going to start learning about more stuff, and yeah, maybe we're going to have longer school times, in which case we want to bump those ages up because people are busy learning. And yeah, kids are going to sneak a beer, they're going to kiss, they're going to have sex, but at the same token, let kids be kids, let adults be adults. So I can see possibly raising those ages, but never lowering. That being said, ideally, we would rewrite the law from the ground up, including the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and every amendment that was ever proposed. The reason is, I'm not going to give you the same old tired claptrap, and I'm only going to deal with the Second Amendment of the United States in a couple sentences. It does say a well-regulated militia. You are not a well-regulated militia. So, end of story. I don't care what the judges have ruled over the years. It's not what the amendment says. Deal with it. As far as the rest of it goes, the Canadian and the United States Constitution and Charter agree you have the right to life and liberty. This needs to be codified. You do have a right to life, but we have people writing living wills, and there's nothing seen wrong with that in present society. Very technically, you don't have the right to write a living will. However, realistically, there's nothing you can do to stop somebody in that situation. The doctors can try to intrude, but at the same token, somebody wanting to cut their life short is going to find a way. Unless you keep them completely sedated and paralyzed, in which case you're violating their right to liberty. So those two are a wonderful combination. Now, as far as liberty goes, that's freedom. And you do have a right to liberty. No argument about it, but we've accepted there must be certain restrictions on our liberty. If the police arrest you, where's your right to liberty? Oh yeah, you don't have it. You have the right to liberty within your jail cell. You have the run of it, but that's it. And speaking of somebody who's had a top secret military clearance, which by the way means virtually nothing, I've accepted top secret military clearance. Basically means you get to see, scraps of paper pass between one officer and the other. That's it. I'm not trying to tell you I was this great commando or anything. No, there's way higher levels of security than I ever got to. But I accepted that even though I had a right to liberty, that there's certain things I will never know. I recently dealt with a major organization, one of the biggest in Canada, definitely one of the biggest in Ontario, and I asked them for simple statistics, things they should keep track of. You know what their response was? They wanted me to file a Freedom of Information request. Really? So I would have had to pay money, go down and get the information, and I would have been pretty cross if I had done that. Fortunately, I'm a resourceful guy, and the right to liberty just meant I checked other sources. Took me a little bit of creative Googling and searching and going through archives, but I was able to get the same information without paying for a Freedom of Information request. And, as documented in my book, Family Disservices, I found out why they weren't willing to give me the information. Because it's very damning on them. For more on that, look at my book, Family Disservices. Link will be in the description along with my other books. I write both fiction and nonfiction, but back to the topic of today. Law and order. So, we live in a confusing century. And it must be even harder for the judges and lawyers, because the judges tend to be older, because it's very difficult to just hop out of law school and go right into being a judge. No, you need some experience. You need some time to develop your knowledge and due process and, know what to say when an attorney's jumping in your face and shouting, "Objection," or whatever crazy tricks they try. A judge has to be very vigilant. You could conceivably do it by the time you were 30, but it would be very hard indeed. We're looking for 40, 50, 60 now. When I was growing up, computers were virtually unknown to 40 and 50-year-olds. My uncle and my mother were considered advanced in their computer knowledge, and they couldn't do squat when it came to me, and I'm not a computer expert by any means. I have friends who can run circles around me in coding. I had an acquaintance, went to university with him, not much more than that, and he had a fraud case against him involving computers. Now, what was being alleged and what happened were two different things. But because of his situation, they had to have lawyers present and a translator, kind of a technical translator, standing there. So when a lawyer said, "We can see by the notches in the save file," whatever, we call it a blockchain these days, I forget what it was, the allocations on the fat table, I believe was the expression, which just simply said what times and dates the files were altered. we can see from that this took place, and this took place. But to the judge, it's all gobbledygook. Oh, we can see from blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I don't blame him. He grew up he probably grew up taking his law degree in the 70s and 80s, fighting his courses, and then made his way into a judgeship in the 90s, and then I guess this was around 2000. In 2000, it had to be in the 90s still. So, yeah, so that's 60s, 70s, and 80s. So in the 90s, there he is, and it was a he, after a hard-fought judgeship, getting presented all this newfangled nonsense that he has no experience dealing with. For the record, my acquaintance won the case, just simply because he was innocent. But in the language of the time, the internet was brand new. I mean, you programmed websites in HTML, or you had Angel Fire websites with all their flashy crap. Don't believe me? Go Google Angel Fire right now and find out what I'm talking about. But you see, the law had not adapted. There were laws in place for fraud, and indeed, even for wire fraud and computer, all that sort of thing. But the judge was in uncomfortable territory and didn't really have a solid law that he could lean on and point to and say, aha. There weren't a lot of cases that he could reference and say, in this situation, do this. And that's why, as we go along, we're going to continue having the same problems. Sooner or later, someone's going to invent another revolutionary technology. They're already talking about the Web 3.0, and what is it called? The metaverse or something like that? Anyway, I've heard the promise before. It was supposed to happen with Web 2.0. That's why I'm kind of mocking it. But the truth is, as a society, we're never going to be able to keep up with the laws that we have. I would love to propose rewriting absolutely everything on the books. But in Canada, we have an experience that the United States doesn't. We had Charlottetown and the Meech Lake Accords. In Charlottetown, they were trying to bring Quebec into the Constitution because in 1983, I think, double check it, all the provinces signed the Constitution except Quebec. And in 1987 and 1988, they were trying to bring Quebec into the Charter and the Constitution, because Quebec was just using the does not apply clause, notwithstanding clause. That's the word I'm looking for. They would just shoot that at everything, say it doesn't apply to us, distinct society, and that was legal defense under the Charter. This was designed to prevent that. The first one got shot down, and at the time I was annoyed because Elijah Harper was saying, this is not fair. We're the First Nations, and I believe he represented the Métis as well, but we are the First Nations, and we are not fairly represented in this charter or this Constitution. In the 1980s, I was a kid. And at the time, I thought he was selfish. Now I understand his point, and he was right. But that's exactly what they did at Meech Lake. They opened up and invited everybody. And what they wound up was a cluster, you-know-what, of compromises. But at least it was an attempt to move forward. But keep in mind, the Charter of Rights and the Constitution were not even 5 years old at this point. And they were trying to update them. So a major document of law within 5 years had become so outdated, they needed to fix it. Now, Meech Lake didn't go through either, and we're still waiting for all that today because nobody who lived that wants to go through anything like it again. The second you open that Constitution up, the Charter up, every single special interest group wants to get in and get their signature on the bottom line, and it's not hard to get someone to sponsor you in a bill or a petition or whatever have you. So that's not the way we go. We're going to have to keep trying to modify things through the Supreme Court. But we saw that recently when the United States Supreme Court showed their hand that they were thinking about striking down Roe versus Wade. Now, in principle, I don't have a problem with this solution because Roe versus Wade is ridiculously out of date. The problem is it's rewriting history. Rewriting history can be a good thing. Look at the amendments in the United States that got repealed. Prohibition was repealed because it didn't fit the sensibilities of the United States at that time. I would argue it still does not. It's hard to call yourself the land of freedom when you have everything restricted. And let's be honest, we have our fair share of laws in Canada that are equally stupid. But it shows you that the documents of law, the very things that conservatives should point to and say, this was passed down by the grace of God himself, are modern and fallible. Do you know no anti-abortion legislation existed in Canada or the United States before the 1890s? Yeah, that doesn't stretch back to either one of our histories. That's pretty modern. Let me say officially, Silverlight is not really pro-abortion, but is not against abortion. It's just Silverlight believes it's not his duty to dictate what happens in a woman's body. See, there's that liberty clause again. Other people are at liberty to do what they want. If I were to be facing that situation, which is extremely unlikely, I would probably encourage the woman to keep the child, but it would ultimately be her decision. I would not be dragging her into court and trying to sue her and everything. And no, I understand that's a woman's freedom, that's a woman's body. I'm not somewhere in one of the many repressive dictatorships in this world that seem to be reflecting the conservative branch of the United States more and more. It's interesting how people will post a meme on Facebook showing Iran or Beirut or any one of those countries in the 1970s, and then after the big revolutions down there, the ones today. I haven't really done research on it. They may actually be the same picture, but I've seen it a few times in a few different places. But that's kind of what we're seeing. And while the law should be a living document, it should always try to reflect life and liberty. We can't start dictating when life happens. We can't start dictating when liberty happens. But we do have medical experts. We have the ability to go out and get a solid answer. And we have the sensibilities of 2022, which is very important. Maybe in 100 years, we enter into some ultra-religious society where we've decided to look back to the 1600s and Puritans and Calvinists and crazy stuff like that. And maybe that is a future. There could easily be an ultra right-wing conservative nation appear on this planet and enforce things. The Amish and the Mennonites, for example, live in a society where they try to keep everything the exact same. Now, I'm not going to make fun of them, although honestly, how would they find out? But that would not be a choice for a lot of people to live in. I mean, it is a slog to live in that society. In the modern day, we have a lot of luxuries that we simply wouldn't have had 200 years ago. Oh, we're locked down? I'll just pop onto Amazon and buy it. Well, 200 years ago, there was no Amazon. Ordering pizza. Yeah, can't do that in the 1800s. Well, maybe you could if you really sorted your logistics out, but it's not practical. In modern day and age, very practical. The point here is, just as we as a species are slowly evolving into nice, plump, juicy, tasty humans, perfect for any alien invader to come and eat, we also have to let our laws evolve. And generally speaking, the human race progresses. Going back to the past is almost always a mistake. So we need to progress forward. We need to make the human rights about humans. And you know what? Your right to life and my right to life do not conflict with each other. Your right to liberty and my right to liberty do not conflict with each other. We live with this weird concept of property rights and liberty, and we've done so for hundreds of years and never had a problem with it. My neighbors, friendly with them all. My kid lost her toy over the next door neighbor's fence, but I wasn't going to jump over the fence. I'm fully physically capable of doing it, but I chose not to jump over the fence. And that was just out of sheer respect for their property. You know what I did? I left a note. Sorry, we dropped our frisbee over here. Can you throw it back? And the lady threw it over. Then the next day we caught each other outside. We wound up chatting a little bit. They came over. We had a fantastic time. See, life and liberty in harmony. It's not that hard to put the two together. And we need to start realizing that we need to start emphasizing harmony. Maybe that's something that needs to go into the constitutions in the future. Harmonious interaction. Because there's always going to be conflicts. We can agree on the big crimes. Murder is wrong, stealing is wrong. We have no problem agreeing on that. We can differ on our punishment structure, but we all know that those are the wrong things to do to people. But that's where harmony comes into play. If we can find ways to live in harmony, maybe it isn't in concert with the laws that are already on the books. Maybe it doesn't necessarily go with the rulings. But maybe that neighbor and myself can live with that because they have a little girl over there too. And I'm sure at some point, daddy's going to miss a catch, mommy's going to miss a catch, little girl is going to throw a little bit too hard. There's going to be a frisbee or a football or something that lands over that fence. But since there's harmony between that neighbor and myself, here you go. I probably wouldn't complain if they hopped over and picked it up, but there's a little bit of a hill on that side, so I wouldn't want them to jump over just because there's a chance when they jump over there's a big drop. So once again, you see, respecting them protects me. I don't know their property. Don't know anything about it. The second I jump over there, they might have a giant dog. Maybe they only let it out at night. Don't know any of those things. But by respecting their life, respecting their liberty, and living in harmony, I don't have any desire to hurt them. I don't have any desire to do anything bad to them. I just want to make sure they're healthy, they're happy, we're healthy, we're happy. We got a nice fence back there. I know, I built it. And it was just because when I moved in, the previous fence had fallen down, and the neighbors there were not the richest in the world. So I had the money. I footed the bill to rebuild the fence and did a lot of it myself. I got the stakes driven in though. That's a pain in the ass work. But you see, even though it technically should be a shared expense, I decided that the harmony of the neighborhood was worth more than the money of my pocket. And now we have a beautiful fence that's strong enough that if they have a 200-pound dog named Bear that thinks he's a real bear, it's not going to cause any damage. It also prevents anybody from getting crazy ideas like hopping the fence because it's a good 7-8 foot fence. No, it's an 8-foot fence now that I think about it. And I'm a tall guy, but I'm not jumping over that fence. I got ladders, but I'm not risking anything for a bloody frisbee. But that's what happens when people respect each other and they live in harmony. When they came over, I happened to notice that the wife was pregnant. Her little girl who came over, I believe, was 12 or 13. It's a little strange that there's that much space between children. The same token, it's not my business. Don't care. You know what? Hope they have 1 million children. Children are beautiful. And that's the thing about harmony. If they can live in harmony in their house and I can live in harmony in my house, and we have a beautiful neighborhood. Let the police do their job. Give them laws, give them mandates, give them tools they can actually work with. I think we're at a point where police having guns on them is no longer a good idea. Should they have access to guns? Yes, a shotgun in the trunk, although not a shotgun necessarily. There's plenty of more advanced weapons for the 21st century that do a better job. Pepper spray, I've never been a big fan of pepper spray, but it would be one thing they could definitely carry with them. A taser, I know there's some controversy over tasers causing heart attacks, but you know what? I'll take my chance on the heart attack versus the bullet. And this is something I can't believe that people actually get in their heads. Oh, the taser may cause a heart attack and blah, blah, blah. The bullet's going to cause a lot worse damage than the taser. Your choice. A bullet or a roll of the dice that maybe you have a rare genetic defect that's not common. I know what I'm choosing. It's not hard. It's not called playing it safe. It's called not being an utter idiot. But the police still do need better tools. Stun grenades do not work the way that you think they do, but I'm just going to use the popular perception of you roll this thing in there, blam, it goes off, everybody goes unconscious. Let's pretend that they would have a tool like that. If they could somehow miniaturize it and put it in a gun, well, not a pistol grip, let's put it that way, or whatever they need to make it work, that would be drastically better than a gun. Yes, there's going to be some criminal, idiot, psychopath, moron who goes around on a killing spree every once in a while, and for that's why I'm saying in the trunks they should still have the firepower to deal with stuff like that. But I'm talking on a regular patrol. How many times do they get into a shootout on a regular patrol? Don't know in the United States. In Canada, it's pretty dang rare. We get some officers up here who retired, having spent their entire life never having pulled out their gun from their holster for any reason other than, maybe just the kids that want to look at it when they visit a school. Is that even a thing anymore? I always knew the kid is that, can I handle your gun? And the officer say, no, I'll let you touch it on this side or whatever. Cool. And yeah. Our laws, they're ridiculous. It's a patchwork of systems that have been molded together over time. And quite frankly, there's a reason why lawyers are paid so well. Here's a hint. I took the bar recently. I was able to pass it. No problem. Now, I've studied law my whole life because I find it interesting. But I wouldn't try to argue in front of a criminal court at the present time, or indeed any court. I'd have to do a lot of research. And yeah, I passed the bar simply because I've spent years reading law, case law, you name it, because one of my consistent jobs has always been reading contracts. So it's kind of something I've always done. That doesn't mean that I'm set to qualified against any lawyer, from the guy first year who hasn't had any experience to a 40-year veteran. No, they're specialists. It's like going from the minor leagues to the pros. There's a different level of play style there. And I'm a minor league lawyer. Yeah, in the people's court, I can get you off. But in actual court, well, if you're really that desperate, I'll help you. But I'm only going to help. I'm not going to take the rap. But people of all sorts of backgrounds have written these laws over hundreds of years. Not everybody who becomes a politician gets to, or was, a lawyer. Remember, the idea has always been the difference between the executive branch of the law, where the people who go out and execute the rules, and the legislative branch, the people who put the rules together. So the executive branch is basically innocent in this whole thing. That's your judges, your courts, your police officers, anybody who passes out a parking ticket, that kind of thing. Your legislative branch really needs to start thinking about what they're doing, because they're penning laws and legislation that could be in effect hundreds of years from now. Quite literally. They need to weigh their decisions a little more carefully. Instead of pandering to whatever kind of thing is out there today, Let's think about what might happen in a couple hundred years. Hey, what rights do we want to make sure people have? With the LGBTQ community, you know what? That falls under life and liberty as far as I'm concerned. And I have no right to tell anybody, including my neighbors, what goes on in their bedrooms. No right whatsoever. There should be no law that restricts them. Now, marriage is an interesting thing. Marriage is a religious and civilian entity. The civilian entity is really what is debated in the courts. The religious one is entirely different. Can't say what, the Catholics or the Mormons or the Muslims want to do, because that's according to their church. But in a civil case, there's no reason that we should be infringing on the life and liberty of people that choose to involve themselves in that relationship. So long as we have clear guidelines between two people above the age of consent, hey, it's golden. Leave it. That's one that we can sit on for a couple hundred years. Because not everybody's going to turn around and... Okay, they're not going to suddenly turn around and become gay. Sorry, I saw this from an Eastern European's friend, and they had... Let's not say friend. Friend is in Facebook friend. But they had someone post on their timeline that their child had to have 127 blood transfusions. He said, I sure hope it comes from normal people. I wanted to attack, but I'm just like, really? Your loss. If I'm dying, I don't care if the blood came from a black person, a gay person, a lesbian, whatever the heck. Save my life. I will figure it out. And I've given a ton of blood. Does it offend anybody out there that they got blood from somebody who drinks alcohol? Not every day. I'm perfectly sober at the present time. But some people have very strong feelings about alcohol. And it would offend them that they got blood from somebody who drinks alcohol. Again, not an alcoholic, just somebody who on Friday likes to sit back and enjoy a tipple or two. We can't let individual opinions affect the greater good. And we become a society that cares about those individual attitudes far too much. We need to come back to building a general consensus. The 1950s and 1960s were not great decades, but at least we could point to a series of American and Canadian values and say, here is what they believe in. Now we can't say that. Now it's good to have diversity. It is. Again, individual opinions, I got no problem with. Hey, I got some opinions that don't jive up with the laws of my country. And believe it or not, I do commit some minor offenses. Now, this is just like you speeding down the highway because, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, there's nobody in front of you. How the hell should you slow down? It's not like you're going to hit anybody. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And I say I do it because you know what? I know everybody does it. Everybody has a law or two that they don't agree with, and most of those are pretty freaking minor. Let's take the sale of reservation cigarettes. I don't really have a problem with this because I'm not a smoker and I don't care. If you're going to buy it cheap, whatever, yeah, everything's expensive these days. I got no problem. Technically, this breaks the law. But I'm not going to come down on anybody for deciding they want to save, I don't know how many bucks. I don't know anything about smoking aside from the fact it's bloody expensive. So forgive my ignorance in this case. But the truth is, that is the truth. Everybody commits minor offenses because they believe that particular law doesn't apply to them. And you know what? As long as they're minor, they should be treated as minor. Unless that guy is filling a truck up and selling those cigarettes out of his store, slap on the wrist, here's your fine, get out of here. If before marijuana became legal, I can tell you, I knew a lot of people that had a small garden that was just out of the way. And yeah, I wasn't going to say nothing about it to nobody. A, because I want to live in harmony with my neighbors. B, I might want to have some. It is in my best interest to not say anything. And yeah, that law's been stricken down, and hopefully it stays gone forever because, yeah, crystal meth and cocaine and stuff like that, they all do horrible things to you. Marijuana long term restricts your brain. Your long term does affect cognitive function, but like that's in the 70 to 80 years use of the darn thing. And to be honest, I've had people on cocaine and crack try to fight me. Never had a problem with a marijuana person. I know that's a stereotype and there's different strains and everything. It affects everybody differently. But I've seriously never had a problem with a marijuana person. But like I said, in all these cases, so many people have broken laws because they felt it didn't apply to them. That shows that a consensus has built in society and the law needs to change. Respecting, once again, the age of majority and the age of consent. I keep pointing to those because, like I said earlier, let's let kids be kids. And yeah, I'm fully aware of what high schoolers do, and those laws don't directly apply to them. But the same token, I don't want a 16-year-old trying to join the military. I don't really want a 16-year-old trying to marry a 40-year-old. And yeah, let's keep some of the structure in place, and then we can build around it. We need a massive audit, and I mean such a massive audit that it couldn't even be contemplated in the modern age. But I'm not the one to do it. I read law, I understand law, and I understand our system is messed up. And it's only going to get more messed up because as our society gets more dynamic and as our laws get more dynamic, the law either needs to be more flexible or written with such clear guidelines that a child of 5 could read it and say, this is right and this is wrong. And it's virtually impossible to do the second one. So that's why I'm saying laws need to be built with more flexibility. I think the thing that annoys me the most, is a person, a non-violent person in possession of cocaine, crystal meth, and all that sort of stuff will get years in the slammer. Years. Meanwhile, one of those predators or sexual offenders and stuff like that gets off in 6 months. Or they have somebody argue, oh, this is going to affect the rest of their life. Well, what do you think they did to the other person? That argument just grated my gears in a way that I can't describe to you. The worst thing is that it worked. That's why we need to change things ultimately, is to protect the things that are the most important. Let's leave it there. I've talked way longer than I usually do, which probably explains why my voice is going in and out. So we wish to thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to click on the link down in the description to be taken to the books on my website, Amazon website. And we hope you have a fantastic day.